From News Channel 9, your local election headquarters, this is the Onondaga County District Attorney Debate. Incumbent Republican Bill Fitzpatrick, Democrat Chuck Keller, and conservative Gary Levine. Here now is your moderator, News Channel 9's Dan Cummings.
Well, welcome to our Onondaga County DA's debate. It's good to see you again. Dan Cummings here. Maybe you've already voted. First time ever we can do that in New York, right? Most of you, though, have not voted. And if you also haven't decided yet who you'll vote for in this three-way race, well, the next 28 minutes may help you decide. Pretty rare in Onondaga County over the last 3 decades that we've had a contested DA's race. This year we have not one, but two challengers. So let's meet them now. Take another look at our three candidates for the office. On the left of your screen is Democrat Chuck Keller. In the middle is Republican incumbent Bill Fitzpatrick. And on the right of your screen is Conservative and Independence Party candidate Gary Levine. Gentlemen, welcome. We did a little draw from a candy bowl before we started, and that means that the first question goes to the DA, Bill Fitzpatrick. But you all get a chance to address this in 60 seconds. Mr. Fitzpatrick, sometimes, and sometimes frequently this year, you've been criticized for launching what appear to be purely political investigations outside the criminal justice realm. Special grand juries are sometimes in panel to take a close look at something that requires subpoenas, something that requires investigation. Is it fair to say you favor an expansive role for the DA, and if so, in what circumstances?
I believe the DA's role obviously is to prosecute crime, but primary role is to keep the community safe, but also to investigate misfeasance and malfeasance. A lot of people don't know that that's actually in the law. It doesn't have to be criminal conduct. It could be misfeasance or malfeasance by a public official. And the overwhelming majority of investigations that I conduct, no one knows about. I probably have 50 to 75 investigations going on right now that won't make the news because we'll look into it, we'll investigate it, and we'll properly conclude that no criminal charges should be brought. But I've never weaponized the DA's office. I've always conducted the investigations that we have done in a fair manner. Perfect example of that is the quote-unquote investigation into Democratic Elections Commissioner Mr. Zarni, which we just concluded, I think, in a very fair way.
Gary Levine, your take on the role of the DA's office. Would you expand it? Do you believe it should be an expansive role or limited?
When I first got started, there were only about 12 assistant DAs, and most of them were part-timers. Now there are 48 assistant DAs, and the population of the county is no greater. The criminal justice system is a huge, grinding bureaucracy, and the district attorney, as the chief law enforcement officer, is in charge of the gear movements. In my view, the whole process ought to be reformed, and that's what I'll do. But the start has to begin with restoring integrity. Integrity is the hub out of which all other reforms spoke.
Mr. Keller.
So, you know, in terms of what the district attorney's office does with these investigations, perception is reality in this circumstance. So the perception in this community is that if you are a person who ends up being on the wrong side of Bill or a rival or a political opponent, the perception is that next thing you know, you're going to get a notice that you got to come down and talk to a grand jury and explain yourself. We've read the paper, we've seen Syracuse.com, investigation after investigation after investigation, and I can't think of any that have actually gone anywhere. Some of these investigations had to be stopped by judges. Other investigations just sort of petered out on their own. But the fact of the matter is that it's part and parcel of sort of the weaponization of the grand jury process. Because it doesn't matter what the outcome is. What matters is that, you know, when you get a letter and you say, hey, get a lawyer, come to the grand jury, that itself is intimidating and terrifying. And even if nothing comes of it, that person knows that they may very well be on the receiving end of it again, and knows maybe next time they're not as outspoken about what their positions were. Or maybe they're not as outspoken in taking a position that's the opposite of what the current administration would say. And I have a real problem with that, and I look to put an end to that.
Mr. Fitzpatrick, time for a rebuttal.
What case is he talking about?
What cases are you talking about?
Oh, well, I mean, we've got the investigations into Mayor Minor's administration with CORE, where a judge had to literally come in and call it a fishing expedition and shut it down.
All right, Mayor Minor's administration. Here's irrefutable facts that we uncovered. 3 affidavits were generated by her corporation counsel's office. 2 of them were signed. The 2 people that signed them later indicated to me, under oath, that they were false. The third affidavit was not signed by Ben Walsh, and the reason he didn't sign it was because it wasn't true. There's no question that she had a political operative write a phony letter to the paper, signed by 5 African-American ministers, 4 of whom testified under oath. They had no idea what the letter was about. And the third and final thing that we uncovered, and I can't talk about all of it because some of it was discovered by the grand jury, was that evidence was withheld from Justice Murphy in a pending litigation. Now, I don't know if my 2 opponents want to say, oh, that's just normal course of business, we would never look into that, that's fine.
So is that an improper investigation, do you think, Mr. Levine? I'll give you a chance to come in on this if you want. Is that too expansive?
When investigations are commenced against those whose only offense is that they disagree with the district attorney, it fundamentally subverts the criminal justice system. The Roush case is the quintessence of the weaponization of the office.
Could you hold that for a sec? I only want to have you hold it because I want Mr. Keller to respond to the minor investigation. You brought it up, you threw it out as an example. As he outlined the results of that investigation, was that an overreach, weaponization of his office?
Well, again, it's part and parcel of what goes on routinely. So again, it's no secret the minor administration and Chief Fowler and you know, the inner workings of the minor administration sort of ran afoul of, you know, the sort of the Republican side of things, and Bill took action. And what happens is we get this intimidation. Again, there wasn't a slew of indictments that came out of this case. In fact, the conclusion of it, my understanding was, is that a judge, and it happened to be a visiting judge came down who had no stake in this county at all, said, that's a fishing expedition, and shut it down. And that's what happened. There's no doubt about that. But I mean, and again, if we're talking about, you know, I commend Bill for the outcome of the Zarni investigation, but let's take a look at that. So I think it's a problem just that Bill was the one doing the investigation. I mean, here we have a candidate for district attorney investigating one of 2 elections commissioners who may very well, whose opinion may very well determine an election. And his position was, rather than say, you know what, this isn't something I should be involved with, I'll turn it over to someone else from another county. He said, well, I'm going to investigate it. And that creates intimidation. Well, that is what those are the kinds of things I'm talking about.
You investigated that and found no criminal wrongdoing.
Right.
Should it have been turned over to some other prosecutor?
Apparently Mr. Keller didn't like the outcome, but we investigate people of both parties without fear or favor. I follow the facts, I follow the evidence. I've had to have public officials removed who were of the same political party of me and actually friends of mine in the course of 28 years.
No, of course,
and
you know,
hold on, let him finish.
That's part of the job. There wasn't anything improper about the minor investigation. It became public because she tried to quash some subpoenas of records that she didn't want the public to see.
So, Mr. Levine, to bring you back in on this, if the same evidence had been presented to you when you were the district attorney regarding Mayor Minor and the developments at the Inner Harbor and Core Development Company, would you not have investigated it at all? Would you have simply walked away from it?
In the Inner Harbor case, the district attorney was taking contributions from Core all the while he was investigating the 2 city hall lawyers. The district attorney had to have known behind Core was the master corrupter Todd Howe. The whole situation is malodorous, as is the Roush case, where the district attorney tried to have former Deputy Police Chief Sean Broughton indicted for trying to expose Roush before Seth Collier was killed.
Yeah, I'm assuming a lot of knowledge on the part of our viewers on the Roush case, but you do need to know that the viewers need to know that within the last 24 to 48 hours, an independent investigation by an outside counsel requested to do this investigation by the Ethics Board of Onondaga County determined that Mr. Fitzpatrick played no role whatsoever in Sean Broughton's termination as Deputy Police Chief or in denial of his reinstatement. So
May I follow up?
Yeah, please.
Yes.
Doesn't that put that to rest?
Yes. The report issued by Mr. Williams,
The independent lawyer,
was without an interview of Chief Broughton.
He requested that interview several times.
He requested the interview, and the rationalization given for why there was not an interview is completely bogus. Mr. Williams was told there would be no interview until the county produced Broughton's personnel records. The county stonewalled, by the way, as they did 2 years ago when the county controller audited the Personnel Commission.
So you don't have any faith in the independent investigation of that ethics board issue regarding
It's a
Sean Brooks?
Soviet-style cover-up.
Well, let's come back down the road. Mr. Fitzpatrick responds, and then you can come in on this.
First of all, as usual, Mr. Levine obviously has come here where he is in the polls with an idea that this is going to be about Pete Roush. I'd like to talk about the opioid crisis and gun violence, but let's talk about what Mr. Levine wants to talk about. A leader, a person who quote unquote has integrity, would say, you know what, in my mailers I made these allegations against Mr. Fitzpatrick. An independent lawyer, a Democrat, a naval veteran, investigated it, tried to talk to Mr. Roush 7 or 8 times, tried to talk to Mr. Broughton, excuse me, and Mr. Broughton, by the way, is represented by someone in my law firm. Gary doesn't think that's important for you to know that. And then say, he found absolutely nothing wrong by Mr. Fitzpatrick. I'm sorry I put that in my mailers. Let's put that to bed. Let's move on and talk about something else. Instead, we get this absolutely calumnious remark about a Soviet-style investigation by a man who served his country, the United States Navy, who I barely know, and who's a Democratic lawyer. What a disgrace.
Mr. Keller, do you agree with the findings of the independent investigator in this case that this whole Sean Broughton, Peter Roush issue can be put to rest or not? Where do you stand on it?
The answer is, the quick answer is no. And the reason why is not because I'm privy to the inner workings of this investigation. My problem is that, again, a quick look at Bill's donor list shows you have who's on there. Mr. Williams is on there. Who's on there? The law firm, Smith Sovic, that Mr. Williams works for. And so when you say it's an independent investigation and an independent person, I don't think an independent person would be a donor to the person you're investigating. That to me would seem to be the very definition of conflict of interest. And these are the kinds of things that I'm talking about. I'm not getting into the minutia of who said what and argued it. There's an appearance here. And the appearance is that, again, is that we have a donor and a donor law firm investigating a candidate who they've given money to, and they say, well, here's our investigation, trust us. How can anybody rely on that investigation when there's clearly favoritism? And that's my problem with it.
Mr. Fitzpatrick.
It's ironic that Mr. Keller would talk about political donations. As we all know, he took a donation from Dr. Newlander, and 3 months later, he recognized the name, he returned that money. Very admirable, except what he hasn't told you is that he's now accepted $600 in donations from Robert Newlander's brother after the fact. I assume that money's going to be returned probably at 5 o'clock this afternoon. The fact of the matter is, I didn't appoint Steve Williams. The county attorney appointed him. I've gotten donations from probably 150 lawyers in town. The overwhelming majority of lawyers in town are supporting me because the office is run very, very well.
Let me move to Mr. Levine for the next question. It's only a slight pivot, but your campaign seems to be based entirely on what you characterize as the integrity issue. Restore integrity by assumedly removing Mr. Fitzpatrick from office. Is there any other issue in the criminal justice system upon which you're asking the voters to give you the job, other than the integrity issue that you've raised?
I repeat for emphasis, out of the hub of integrity spokes all other reform and all other improvement. Now, morale in the office is low. Outside the office, there is a great deal of cynicism. Cynicism is high about the operation of the office. With a reform administration, there will be a trust restored. Now the office is feared.
Mr. Keller, you have a minute here if you want to address that. Do you agree with that?
You know, if we're talking about trust and fear of the office, again, I'm in the court system every day. I work with Bill's prosecutors on a daily basis. I know people are in the office now, people have been in the office. And the one thing they tell me is that there's this culture of intimidation and fear in the office that prevents them from really doing their jobs. And their biggest goal is not to do justice, and that's whether or not you're a defendant or a victim of crime. Their biggest concern is that somebody in a corner office is going to come for them and come for their job because they said the wrong thing or did the wrong thing, or they prosecuted the wrong person or didn't prosecute the right person hard enough. You know, by contrast, people who commit crimes in this county are no longer afraid of the district attorney's office. We have, 5 acquittals of homicide defendants this year. 7 in 2017. 2 more cases were dismissed by judges for misconduct at the grand jury level this year. You got pro se defendant after pro se defendant.
Time is up on this question. We have to give Mr. Fitzpatrick time to respond to all of it.
It's a hodgepodge of stuff. I could bring 48 assistant DAs in here and tell you that it's the best office they've ever worked in. And these two will respond, well, they're only saying that because they're afraid. This stuff is made up out of whole cloth. There's no assistant DA that is afraid of working for me. I love them like my own family. I treat them great. And what Mr. Keller has already been exposed as misleading, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt about our trial record of conviction. What he doesn't tell you is that, yeah, there were 4 acquittals this year. 2 of the people are serving lengthy prison times in state prison because they were they were convicted of lesser charges. Let's just tell the whole story.
Mr. Keller, you'd say it's time for a change. That's one of your taglines in the campaign. You've had tremendous years of experience on the defense side of the bar. What makes you think you can flip the script overnight and become a prosecutor when you've been defending the bad guys all these years?
Well, I don't look at it as defending bad guys. What it is you're a part of the criminal justice system. And in order to have a functioning criminal justice system, you need to have well-trained professional prosecutors, an independent judiciary, and zealous defense. And in my career, I've been a zealous defender. Before Bill was the DA, he was a zealous defender. I don't look at it as so much of changing hats as just changing clients. Right now, my clients are individuals. Come January 1st, my clients will be the people of Onondaga County. The rules are the same, the law is the same, the courtroom's the same, the judge is the same. I know the people, the players, the issues. I know all those things. So I feel I'm more than qualified for the position.
Mr. Fitzpatrick, you have a minute here.
I would not rebut what Chuck just said. I do not challenge the fact that he is a very experienced criminal defense lawyer. He knows the system. The only question I have is, in terms of specificity, what is it that you would do differently? Mr. Levine is completely unqualified to be DA. He'll get his minute and he'll start in about integrity and how he knew Rappelgate and so forth and so on, but he has no qualifications to be DA.
Well, Mr. Levine, you have a minute now to talk about that, your qualifications for the office in the criminal justice realm.
Yes. May I point out, the next district attorney of Queens County, which has more than 4 times the population of Onondaga County, is Melinda Katz. So far as I know, she never tried a criminal case. I will paraphrase the next DA of Queens County. I have the administrative know-how, skill, and commitment to lead the reform. I have not spent my career as a prosecutor propagating, nurturing, and living off the broken criminal justice system. An outside perspective is necessary to reform the office.
Next question goes to Mr. Fitzpatrick. I'm changing the question from what I was going to ask because you've been, the results of your, Mr. Keller has particularly indicated that not only does he says there's cynicism on the outside and intimidation on the inside, and by the way, you're not getting any results. Can you make a statement to the voters about the results when it comes to prosecuting criminals in this county?
Sure. I mean, look, there's metrics that you can follow, Dan. Number one, what's our conviction rate? It's been very, very steady at 95% over the course of my tenure. Do we operate within budget? Yes, we do. Do we have people that are career prosecutors that stay in the office? Yes, we do. Look at some of the alumni of the office who have become county executives, judges. They've gone on to public service in Albany and so forth and so on. I'm very, very proud of that fact. I'm very, very close to my office. They work very, very hard, and run against me. Don't run against the 48 people that have given most of their adult lives to trying to keep this community safer.
Derry Levine, you have a minute if you want to use it, or on the results.
The citizenry intuitively understands criminal law and procedure is very technical. The trial judges and the appellate judges closely scrutinize the conduct of prosecutors, how the case is presented, mistakes that are made. The key is preparation before the trial. The office now has, unfortunately, a reputation for being sloppy. It requires new management, and it requires a change at the top.
Mr. Keller.
Well, I mean, the easy example for this is this case that one of the county court judges dismissed earlier this year, a predatory sex offense case that by the way, after sworn submissions by Bill's office and Bill's own prosecutor who handled that case, the judge found, as a matter of fact, that that person hadn't really opened the file or taken a look at literally it's the same charge, severity as murder, hadn't opened the file until 6 days before a trial was supposed to happen. I mean, that kind of thing is just unacceptable. And the reason why it happens, I'm not blaming that particular person, but that trickles down from the top because, again, I'm not making this up. People don't come to me and tell me stories from the office. I don't know why Bill thinks that would happen. I mean, people come to me and they talk about how they're not allowed to do their jobs. And when they are, there's no real supervision. And when people drop the ball, there's little to no accountability. And that just can't continue. It doesn't keep us safe.
Any merit to that? Mr. You can rebut this a little bit if you choose.
Well, he finally mentioned one specific case, the Pratt case, and the case is under appeal, and we will win the appeal. Judges sometimes make a mistake. The judge in that case made a mistake. My lawyer did what was ethically required of her to do, and it's completely untrue that she didn't open the file. She's a very, very good prosecutor. And when we win that appeal, we'll prosecute and hopefully convict Mr. Pratt.
I mean, I can respond to that. I was actually in court when the arguments occurred. I heard the words that came out of her mouth. I heard what the judge said. I was there. Bill wasn't there. I was there.
Judge,
I heard
I've
it.
seen the
Bill,
file.
I've
been through the file.
I'd like to
you
answer
sat
the
in
question.
court. You don't know anything about the case other than 30 seconds
I
what you
know.
heard in court.
It's not
and
the
you
30
want to
seconds.
slander this woman who's a
It has nothing
dedicated,
to do with
wonderful
her.
prosecutor.
And you know that.
Go right
You
ahead.
know that.
Go right ahead.
You
Keep
know
up.
it. The fact of the matter is we're not talking about someone's ethical obligations. We're talking about somebody who didn't really take a good look at the file. And again, rather than say, hey, how can we do better? Again, Bill does what he does. He blames the judge, said, hey, judges make mistakes. When he was interviewed on it, he said, hey, it's the police. They're the ones who screwed up the investigation. The problem becomes that when you are incapable of looking in the mirror and saying, hey, we made a mistake, you can't fix mistakes. We are all going to make mistakes. I make mistakes. Everyone does. But you can't fix them until you say, hey, it is possible that we screwed up. That's my problem.
Besides the one case you mentioned, you have, I'm sure, somewhere a list of others that you can point to as far as this rampant sloppiness within the office?
Sure. There was a case where a bunch of protesters protesting ICE. They were all going to trial. They were all arrested, I think, for disorderly conduct, some minor charge. They're all arrested. And the prosecution in that case conducted a lineup, or not a lineup, I should say a photo lineup. In other words, they put a picture in front of somebody. But what they failed to do, because again, lack of training, lack of supervision, lack of accountability, all the charges were dismissed because that's improper. You have to provide notice of that. And again, I don't want to get too detailed about it, but it's a complete dropping of the ball. It wasn't an accident.
Mr.
It was that we don't know the law.
Has a chance to respond to that.
In 28 years, I've handled approximately between 250,000 and 500,000 cases. So we now know about one sex abuse case, which, mark my words, will be restored to the calendar, and some disorderly conduct cases.
Well,
I'll take that record anytime.
And I want to respond to that
you know
because,
what? We have to get to closing statements. This has been eye-opening in some ways, and the voters are hearing what they need to hear, perhaps. But Bill Fitzpatrick, you have 1 minute for a closing statement.
Thanks, Dan, and thanks for having us here. Folks, I wish we had talked about gun violence and the opioid crisis and witness intimidation, and instead we're talking about lies from Mr. Levine and Mr. Keller's firm belief, and I believe it's a sincere belief, that the criminal justice system is broken. His stats about my conviction rate have been proven to be wrong. His allegations about overcrowding in the jails is wrong. They were down 12% from this time last year. But let me tell you the starkest difference between the three of us. There's only one person on this panel that has actually walked into court and carried a burden of proof. There's only one person that's been to a victim's funeral and hugged that child's mother and said, I'm going to get justice for your child. There's only one person that got a 4:00 a.m. phone call and said, Tony Saccone just wiped out 3 children, and you have to meet with those families and promise them justice. That's me. I've been your champion for 28 years, and I'd be so honored to be your champion for 4 more years.
Mr. Levine, you have 60 seconds.
Thank you very much. There is an urgent and compelling need to restore integrity to the office of District Attorney. When integrity is restored, The office will be respected, not feared.
And Mr. Keller, you have 60 seconds.
So 28 years is a long time. The old methods of prosecuting cases and old methods of running an office just don't work. It is not enough to get by on arrogance and bluster. We need to have a prosecutor who is engaged, who is in the office, who requires supervision, training, and accountability to keep us all safe. Again, we can argue about the numbers, but the fact is that this district attorney's office has lost homicide trial after homicide trial. That does not keep us safe. No longer do criminals fear the DA's office. Honest, law-abiding citizens do. We all know it. That perception is reality. That has to change. I will be the one to change it, and I will be the one to help keep this county safe. And that's why I'm asking for your vote.
You know, this is a tightly contested election. We don't know what the polls, though. We have no interest in seeing what anybody's independent polling has shown. The fact, though, that it's a contested race with two candidates challenging the longtime incumbent makes a difference in Onondaga County. So you may need to get out and vote on Tuesday if you haven't cast your vote already. And we encourage you, if you are registered, too late to register now, but if you are registered, get out and cast a vote, not just for this county-wide race, but for the race for Onondaga County Executive. And we invite you to watch that debate on News Channel 9 and localsyr.com as well. So with my thanks to the three candidates, Mr. Levine, Mr. Fitzpatrick, and Mr. Keller, I also want to thank them for a campaign well run and for being here with us today and helping you perhaps draw some lines of differences and demarcation between these three candidates for the office of Onondaga County DA. We thank you for watching. We'll see you soon on News Channel 9.